All right, guys. Great morning practice. Guys are really excited about this matchup. It was my favorite meeting of the year last night, and my sixth time having it. The first year here, not knowing as much myself about the rivalry. You know, Tom Luke spoke about it, and I've had him every year do that to the team, especially because I think it's so critical nowadays. You know, because this isn't the old days where 75% of our roster is, you know, grew up in Mississippi and from here, and so it's really critical for guys. And with whatever half of our room being not having even played in one of these games, and almost nobody in our room even being here 2 years ago in the game, it's really critical for them to hear that and hear the passion that Tom has for the rivalry. And for those of you that don't know, you know, he was playing quarterback and was knocked out of the game hurt when he was playing, and next thing you knew, he woke up in the hospital and found out through the phone ringing, the hospital phone ringing, as Mississippi State fans were calling the hospital room, telling him he lost the game. So that kind of makes it personal. So it's great when our players hear how he talks about it and how much it means to so many people in the state. And my favorite line is when he says, you know, you could give him a brand new maroon car and he wouldn't get in it. That's how much he feels about the color and how personal this is. So it's a huge game. You know, next one on the schedule, everything is to get to 1-0. These guys, I think, are really talented. I think Levy's done a great job with them, you know, making them competitive. Shoot, they took Texas and Tennessee at home this year into overtime, and really have improved from a year ago, and doing a great job over there. So we're excited about the matchup. A lot at stake, obviously, and to get to 1-0 to finish off this phenomenal regular season. So with that, you know, I'm sure you got a lot of other questions, but we're going to, you know, just answer questions focused on this game or this season and our players.
Lane, I want to follow up on a question I asked you on one of the Sunday calls about your winning percentage at Ole Miss. Right now, 2 wins would get you to be the winningest coach in Ole Miss history over Coach Johnny Vaught at 74, a little over 74%. How important would that be to your legacy and as a college football coach to be the winningest coach at Ole Miss?
Well, that's a good question. I didn't know any of that. You know, that's pretty neat. Again, that's just a lot of players playing really well and a lot of assistant coaches doing a really good job here. And so, you know, that's pretty historic numbers. And again, that's just appreciative of all the players and coaches that were a part of that. I've always said the best thing to do, got it from Pete Carroll, the most exciting thing to do professionally in life and in a lot of areas is to do it better than it's ever been done before. And anybody can do it 1 year. You know, can you do it over and over and over again? So that's a pretty neat stat, but that's a credit to the players and assistant coaches.
Coach, you've played in this game more than a few times now. How would you say that this game almost feels differently than other matchups? I get it's a rivalry, but I mean, this year especially, they're fighting for a bowl game, and you guys are fighting for potentially a home playoff game.
Yeah, like I said, Levy's done a great job. You know, he's got them in a position to, you know, be up, you know, to be bowl eligible and make a bowl game. So, you know, and obviously a lot at stake for us. But I think even without that, you know, I've always said rivalries, this one, but most of them also, you know, records don't matter, and you see it all the time in scores. And I used to even say it when they're talking about common opponents in the SEC formula about win-loss percentages and who they pair you with, because they take in that with the common opponent of your matchup they're not going to mess with, like the Egg Bowl, and then work the numbers around that. And I said, you really shouldn't take that into account because the records don't matter in rivalries, and you see it. You'll see it all over the weekend in games that are supposed to go one way based off of records or spreads, and a lot of times they don't.
Lane, Keith released a statement on Friday saying that you, him, and Chancellor Boyce had a meeting about your future. Are you able to elaborate on the nature of that meeting at all?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, very fair question, but we're not answering anything that doesn't have to do with the game and the team and the season. But fair question.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, obviously the game's the biggest thing, but for the last 2 weeks, it's been anything but the game. So for you, when you think about how the last 2 weeks has kind of played out, is there anything, if you could, you would change about how your role in the last 2 weeks at all? I mean, is there anything you go back and change if you could?
Well, I mean, you say that, but people said the same thing about the Florida game, that there was all this distraction and how could the team focus, and I think they played pretty well. So I don't have anything more to say about that, but I think our team's been very focused since noise has been out there all the way back to the Oklahoma game and the tunnel before that and that morning and everything. What are they, 4-0? So it's a pretty good job by them.
You mentioned on Pat McAfee how you don't make decisions based on money. When you do make your decisions, what are the considerations for you then, especially when it comes to football decisions, right? Like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, very fair question, but I'm not going into it because, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to keep this to this team and in this game.
Trinidad's waiver process, kind of where is that? And he's got confidence. Does Ole Miss have confidence on that end about potentially getting that? I know it's a complicated case.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'd like for him to win that because he wants to and, wants to play college again for another year. So I'm totally in support of that. I've been on that for months, trying to get that passed.
This morning, Glenn Boyce doing an interview and spoke highly of your staff and your assistants and really pushed how they've kind of been the anchor to keep the team focused. Just from your viewpoint, what has that staff done, like you said, dating back to the Oklahoma game?
Yeah, I'd been at practice. I didn't see that interview, so I don't really know how to exactly comment on what he said. I've said before, just like I answered that, our staff and our players are the biggest reason we've had success over 6 years and put ourselves in position to be where we are.
What do you like about this year's team that makes you think they can contend for a championship?
Well, I think they really play well together. They find a way to overcome adversity within games that happens, especially in this conference, and they've done a really good job of that. This has been a pretty, consistent program. Somebody mentioned the other day, like, I don't know how many, I should know this, but there's probably a couple others, maybe Ohio State and whoever, but, over 2 years that, have won every game and then their losses are one-score games, and they played really consistent. And they find a way to overcome the adversity within the games, which is really cool because this was supposed to be a rebuilding year. This was supposed to be 2 returning starters and, middle of the SEC year. So it's pretty neat, and especially led by a quarterback that got here in the summer and didn't even start at the beginning of the season.
If that plays out and you guys are able to go on a run, how important is it to you to finish out the season with this team?
Very important. I've never thought of anything different than that.
And then how much, if at all, have you kind of reflected on your past and leaving or staying different places? And has that helped you kind of wade through this process this time around?
No, I mean, I don't know about all that. I've kind of, over the years of the changes that I've made, I've had a lot of time to reflect and on things that have happened. And I really feel like in age, I've figured out they all happened exactly how they were supposed to happen, when they were supposed to happen. I just didn't think it at the time. I thought they were disasters. And they're just all part of my story. And, I spoke at my dad's funeral when he passed, and I always wondered why we moved so much, because it was hard on us as kids and everything. And I realized that was just all part of his story, and all the people that came to the funeral or wrote notes from all the different places, I realized that was God's plan for him to impact all those people and have all those relationships. And so I think all the stuff that happened how it was supposed to happen.
Coach, I know Trinidad has only been here since May, but what has he meant to this season and this program in his such a short time of being here?
Yeah, it's an awesome story. I've said it all year. You know, we were joking around last night, sitting up here, and we were looking at his stats in some games last year with him. And we're like, I can't even remember, you know, we're like, you threw for more yards against Oklahoma than you did against Northeast Oklahoma, you know, last year. So it's just such a cool story to see him. And he just, you know, he was at Knox's game. And during the game, you know, some fans were, you know, yelling his name over there. And he would walk over, you know, all the way to the fence and take time to sign for them, take pictures with them. And he really does a really good job of just, you know, enjoying the moment and embracing it. And I think a lot of that comes from not having that. And so it's really neat to see, because that's so abnormal. So often in that position, you've always been kind of the 4 or 5 star guy. And, you know, so it's just a really cool story and how he's handled it, and he's not changed.
Yeah, Lane, a little over 2 years ago, we saw you at the end of the Georgia game, and it just felt like that was a big moment in your career, specifically here at Ole Miss. Recruited really well, had a big year last year, but before the season began last year, you talked about how the goal was to play in the college football playoff, win a national championship. How rewarding is it for you now to have a game like the Egg Bowl where you can win that to catapult, and how big would that be for the city of Oxford to be able to host a college football playoff game here on campus?
Well, that would be huge. Like somebody said, and I don't know the history like a lot of people, that would be the biggest sporting event in the history of the state of Mississippi. That's a pretty big statement. I actually asked Keith that the other day, and he said he would think that would be true. So we need a historian of Mississippi to know if that's true or not. I think DK would know. So yeah, that would be amazing. Obviously, we got to get to 1-0 for any of that to happen, and that's the whole goal this week. But to bring a 9th game to the town, and you know, in scheduling back when, you know, we decided on scheduling and who we're going to play and all that, one of the big things of going to so many home games was because how Oxford and the whole community revolves around the football program. And you know, 8 home games is abnormal, but a big part of that was because what that gives back to the community at home games, and how many people profit off of that in the community. So it would be amazing to have a 9th.
Lane, just because of the ambiguity, I was just curious, when Keith says expects a decision on Saturday, is that a decision that's been made, or is that still in consideration? Like, people are just curious about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can just keep going. I'm not going to answer them, so that's 3 of them. You got another one?
No, I got one about William Eccles, actually. He's your
Good.
highest graded defender. I also asked another one about Trinidad, too. It's not just about that, but I'm curious about William Eccles. He's the 3rd highest, or the highest graded defender you have this year. This is his first year starting. We talked about how good he's come. You mentioned how he was a good run stopper, but really he's transformed even into a pass rusher and stuff like that at that position, D tackle. What have you seen from him and how he's kind of grown into that role?
Yeah, Will's done a great job, really pass and run defending, and has a high ceiling, and you know, glad he stayed here. And you know, really our front has really come along throughout the season. Has been a big reason why we've had more success on defense from early in the year.
Coach, you and Coach Levy shared obviously a room here, well, not a room, but you guys coached together here for a year. What's your relationship with him like? And just, I don't know, have you talked to him recently during the season, or have you maybe just embraced the rivalry and maybe just not said anything at all?
Yeah, I think Levy's one of the best offensive minds in football, and I think he does an amazing job, and very appreciative of his time here. I also thought it was a lot of respect to Ole Miss, you know, that Mississippi State hires a head coach that, you know, just a few years before had been here and been part of our program. So I think the world of him, and he's a great person too.
How have you seen kind of the team respond to all the noise surrounding you?
Yeah, I think they've done an amazing job. They were here at 8:30 last night and back this morning and for practice. And I've said it before, it's a different generation, guys. I know it's different than what we were in when players couldn't leave and players chose to go play for their home state a lot. And all that. This is a different generation. They all can leave every year. A lot of that is financially based, and so they don't think the traditional way that years ago about their coach and what's going to go on with him next year. That's not how they think anymore, and that makes it a lot easier not to listen to noise, because as a fan, that noise is really loud because it's your team, and it's your team for a long time. These kids don't think that way. Just it's a product of the system.
Trinidad did come out with a great statement today. He's talking about how locked in the team was, how he's been a leader, and he also his trust in you to have them prepare for this week. Just what did you think of that, and kind of the leader he's become, and being outspoken in that way? How has he grown in that piece of it, I think?
Yeah, again, I've been at practice, but Trinidad's an amazing leader, and I think that's so rare for a kid that just got here in the summer, to be able to have the success that he has. That's why I hope for him he gets another year so he could have a whole spring ball, to even improve to go into another season from where he was this year, just scrambling to try to learn things in the summer. Didn't even know he was a starter.
All right, thanks, Scott. We'll have players
All right,
next.
thanks.